Welcome everyone to Module 1 of our course. This module is called The Fundamentals of the Malthusian Economy. We're going to have 4 videos. In the first video, I'm going to talk about world population, world income in very long historical perspective. Then in the second video, I'm going to explain to you the fundamentals of the Malthusian economy, what the Malthusian economy is and how it behaves. In the third video, I'm going to explain to you how we escaped from the Malthusian trap. We're going to focus on demographic transition, and Rob, in the next module, will talk much more about technological progress. And in the fourth video, I'm going to present you a simple Malthusian model, a mathematical model. And this will help you understand a little bit better what a Malthusian economy is, and also you'll be able to play a little bit with the model. So let's just start with world population, world income in very long historical perspective, from the deep past to today. I want to start with a thought experiment, which is useful to understand the changes that happened in the economy of the world. So imagine that we have a time machine, and imagine that we can take someone from ancient Rome, let's say an average person with average education, average occupation, and we can take her from the first century and make her travel to the 19th century Rome, so around 1800s. So her knowledge from ancient Rome would be largely applicable in 19th century Rome, meaning that her skills, most likely she would do a physical job in the first century Rome. In the 9th century Rome, again, it would be mostly physical work. The types of occupations that existed in first century Rome were more or less the same of the types of occupations that existed in 19th century Rome. So farming, kind of the same farming techniques, not a lot of technological improvement. So mostly the technological improvement that happened from first century to 19th century was incremental, meaning that there were improvements in the same techniques that people used in their occupations, but there was not a qualitative change, a discontinuous change in technology. And one thing that is striking, at least to me, is that life expectancy was largely unchanged from first century to 19th century Rome, so around 30 to 35 years old. So this person would be able to adapt very easily if we take her from ancient Rome, first century Rome to 19th century Rome. Now we look at a different situation, a situation in which we take someone from 19th century Rome, so 1800s, more or less, to Rome today, in 2023. And then we observe that this would be a shocking experience for this person. Why? Because her knowledge would be largely obsolete. So she would be confronted with GPS, computers, electricity, um, cars, airplanes, things that to her would appear to be witchcraft. Her occupation would require very different skills from the occupation that she had in 19th century Rome. So most of people wouldn't be working on farms. Most people would be using computers, would be using electronic devices. She wouldn't know how to use them. And on top of all that, life expectancy would double. So she would be able to live twice or even more than twice the amount of years she was able to live in 19th century Rome. So this would be a shocking experience to her. This thought experiment shows that in the last 200 years, the changes that we observe are much more shocking and fundamental than the changes we observed in the first, let's say, 1900 years of human history. And we can see that if we look at income per capita from year 0 to year 2000, 2020. So here we see income per capita in 2011 US dollars. So this is constant dollars, it's constant value income per capita. And in the x-axis, we have our timeline from year 0 to year 2000. And then we can see that for the vast majority of humanity's history, so from 0 to up to around the 1800s, there was no change in income per capita. There was around the 1500s, there was a very small change in Western Europe, but the real difference started in the 1800s with the Industrial Revolution. We're going to talk about that. And we can see that the yellow line here are Western Europe countries. So the first countries to escape from the what is called the Malthusian trap, which is like this long stagnation. And then we can see that after the 1800s, there was a massive increase, an exponential increase in income per capita in the world. And even the poorest regions in the world, which is now is Africa in green here, also experienced a very important, very relevant increase in per capita income. If we look at world population, and now in the last 12,000 years, so from 10,000 BC to today, 2020, we also see the same pattern. So we also see that if we take the population in 10,000 BC, it was around 4 million. And this was more or less constant with very little variation until 2000 BC. Then in year 0, we see that it was around 190 million in the entire globe. And again, around the 1800s, we see a massive increase, an exponential increase to 8 billion, almost 8 billion people in 2022. So again, it's easy to see that world population tracked income per capita. There was a very important change around the 1800s. A little bit of variation before that, but mostly stagnation. And then after the 1800s, a huge increase. And then here in orange, we can also see global life expectancy. So here, global life expectancy before the 1800 was less than 30 years. And in 2009, global life expectancy was around 73 years. So again, also life expectancy didn't vary much before 1800s. So what are our conclusions so far? Before 1800, income per person, and this is, I'm considering the food, clothing, heat, light, housing available per head. So really kind of like living standards of a person varied across societies and epochs, but there was no upward trend. So if we go back to the graph, if income per capita, before 1800, it was mostly stagnant with a little bit of variation at some points, but mostly stagnant. There were short-term gains in income because of technological advancements, productivity increases, but these were lost through population growth. We're going to talk more about that. Life expectancy was no higher in 1800 than for hunter-gatherers, so 30 to 35 years, depending on the society and the epoch, but around this number, this figure. And stature, which is a measure of quality of diet and children's exposure to disease that sometimes economists and health economists use, was actually higher in the Stone Age than in the 1800s, meaning that people were higher, were taller in the Stone Age in comparison to the 1800s. And this is actually a striking fact, which is very interesting. In the Stone Age, it seems that health outcomes were better than in the 1800s, on the verge of the Industrial Revolution. And this has to do with the way property was organized in the Stone Age, which is the collective property rights and more potent safety nets to everyone. And in the 1800s, these safety nets they just vanished, and people had like less of the safety nets and the safety mechanisms to guarantee good health outcomes. So we actually, that's why we observe a decrease in stature. And then if we take all of this together, we conclude that the average person in the world of 1800 was no better off than the average person of, say, 100,000 years ago, which is crazy. It is the first time I read that, I was like, wow, this is a surprising fact. So we can divide the world phases of development in three epochs or regimes. The first one is the Malthusian epoch, which comprises around 99.9% of humanity's history. So it's if we go back to the graph of income per capita, it's pretty much everything that happened before the 1800s. So a huge period of stagnation, very, very long period of stagnation. Then there was the post-Malthusian regime, which is the first phase of increase in world population, life expectancy, and income per capita. And more recently, we have the modern growth regime, which is after the Industrial Revolution, from the Industrial Revolution to today, which is this exponential curve that I showed you before. So the first phase of development is characterized by what is usually called the Malthusian trap. So Malthus famously wrote that population must always be kept down to the level of the means of subsistence. So this is the quote I copied and pasted here, which is his idea was very simple and explained the word very well before the Industrial Revolution, which is the following idea. Every gain in income, every gain in technology improvement and productivity would increase population growth. And then this gain would be eaten up by the increase in number of people in a given society. Which means that living standards would always be constrained by population. This is his idea. So most of you might remember him because I think his most famous quote was that uh, food production increases arithmetically and population increases geometrically, which might not be super accurate, which is actually an accurate idea and a powerful idea that explains this period of stagnation, is that population is constrained economic development and living standards. So humanity was constrained by the size of its population. So let's talk a little bit and define more precisely what we mean by the Malthusian trap. We have already seen that during the Malthusian epoch, stagnation in living standards was the norm. So income per capita fluctuated around the subsistence level, but never really took off. And life expectancy fluctuated around the range of 25 to 40 years. So as I said before, it was mostly 30 to 35 years most of the time. So the Malthusian trap is defined as the short-term gain in income through technological advances were inevitably lost through population growth. Again, every time there was an increase, a gain in income per capita via increased productivity, population would grow, and then this gain would be eaten up by increased population. You would have to share the gain with more people. And then people would die and population would go back to the equilibrium level. So even today, some societies in the developing world, for example in sub-Saharan Africa, are still trapped in what is called the Malthusian epoch or the Malthusian trap, where technological advances merely produce more people, and then with more people, living standards go down to subsistence level because you need to feed more people. So here is the same graph for income per person. This I took from Gregory Clark's book, and it shows income per person from 1000 BC to year 2000. And then it's easier to see the three phases here. So the Malthusian trap, which was basically income per person around the subsistence level of this line here. And then there was the Industrial Revolution and what is called the Great Divergence. So some countries got much richer than others. And then you can see here that there is a line going down. These are the least developed countries. So, sorry. So there was a divergence between countries, richest countries, Western countries, European countries like Sweden, UK, US, got very rich after the Industrial Revolution, and some sub-Saharan countries got poorer than before. And this is because what we talked, the way property rights were organized. So these are the three phases of development we can observe here. So Malthusian trap, Industrial Revolution, and Great Divergence. It is actually another way to say Malthusian epoch, the post-Malthusian regime, which was around the Industrial Revolution and modern growth regime. Okay, that's it for now.